There are times in our applications where we need to do some kind of work to prepare a class before we use it, and that's where static initialization blocks come in. Static initialization blocks perform basically one-time type initialization. And the neat thing about them is that they execute automatically before your type's first use. Now remember, we've talked about initialization blocks earlier in the course, but those were instance initialization blocks. Remember that the instance initialization blocks automatically executed before any of your constructors. Well, static initialization blocks execute before you actually even start using the type. You can kind of think of those as type initializers. Now basically, they're statements enclosed in brackets outside of any method or constructor, but you have to mark it, of course, with the keyword static. Now being static, they cannot access any instance members. They can only access static members. And because they're called automatically, you have to handle any checked exceptions within the initialization block. There's no concept of a throws keyword on here. You have to make sure you take care of everything within the initialization block itself. So let's take an example of using this in an application. Now let's imagine that we have a file listing crew members that are available to do some work. If you look at this, you'll notice that the first column is the person's job, things like a pilot or a co-pilot, and each of these values corresponds to the enumeration we created earlier in the course, which is our flight crew jobs. And then after the job, we have a comma, and then the person's name. And what we want to do with these values is we want to be able to, in our code, to be able to declare a variable something like crew member, and we'll have a class that we'll call crew manager, where we can call a static method on it, find available, where we identify the job that we need to fill, and the crew manager find available method will return back a crew member who can fill in that job that's not already assigned to another job. So let's look at our crew manager class. Now the idea of find available is pretty simple, right? As we lay out our crew manager class, of course we'll need to have a constant for the file name we want to load from. We'll need to have the array of crew members that we'll call pool. And then we can go and have our find available method. Again, it accepts the job as a parameter, and the implementation is pretty straightforward. Basically, we'll have to have a variable to hold the matching crew member. We'll want to loop through that pool of crew members, and then inside there we basically just want to check. As long as there's a valid spot in the pool, if the job matches, then we know we want that person. So we'll store a reference to them from the pool. We'll remove them from the pool so we don't assign them to two different jobs. And then from there we break out and return back that crew member. The question is though, how does pool get initialized from the file? Now we could go write another static method called initialize or something like that